They say when the ocean sleeps, the city of Azure wakes. And deep beneath its layers of salt and song, the bone market breathes. It's a place whispered about in legends, or realm hidden from the sun, where the currency isn't gold or silver, but the very essence of life itself, bones. By day, Sefu Balogun was a nobody. Just another face in the bustling crowds, another son of the street, invisible and insignificant. But when night fell, and the city's vibrant drums went silent, Sefu walked a different path. He descended into the underworld of Azure, a place where the bones of the long-forgotten glowed with an eerie, ember-like light. This was the bone market. Here, spirits of the ancestors were silent witnesses to every transaction, and the cold, hard language of greed spoke far louder than any prayer. Sefu wasn't a man driven by ambition or a thirst for power. He was a smuggler, a purveyor of relics, but not for pride or glory. He did it for one simple, brutal reason: survival. In the bone market, every day was a fight to see the next. Each artifact he handled was steeped in history, a vessel carrying a story from a life once lived. And every one of these stories carried the same chilling warning, a truth known to all who walk these glowing tunnels: what you steal will one day demand you. For a long time, Sefu navigated this dangerous world with skill and caution. He understood the rules, respected the boundaries, and managed to keep his head down. But survival has a way of pushing you to the edge, forcing you to take risks you know you shouldn't. And one night, Sefu made a mistake. He stole the wrong thing. It was a small relic, no bigger than the palm of his hand, intricately carved from what looked like ivory and ash. It felt strangely warm to the touch, and it seemed to thrum with a life of its own. The moment his skin made contact with it, a faint whisper echoed in his mind. It wasn't just one voice, but many, speaking names he didn't recognize. And then, the whispers changed. They spoke of deaths. Deaths that had not yet happened. He held in his hand a ledger of future murders, a chilling account of lives sold before a single drop of blood was spilled. Sefu's heart hammered against his ribs. This was power unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was dark, forbidden, and incredibly valuable. His discovery, however, did not go unnoticed. His theft, this single act of desperation, drew the gaze of the one person no one in the bone market ever wanted to cross, Madam Kakoro. She was a figure of myth, a woman who seemed older than memory itself. Always wrapped in rich velvet and adorned with bones, she exuded an aura of absolute authority. Her power wasn't just in her reputation, it was sealed in contracts, dark pacts carved into human remains that lined the walls of her sanctum. Madame Kakoro ruled the bone market not with loud commands or overt threats, but with chilling smiles and a terrifying silence. Her law was absolute and brutally simple: nothing leaves the market without payment. And the price was always steep. Sefu felt her eyes on him, even when she was nowhere to be seen. A cold dread began to creep into his soul. He tried to understand the relic he'd stolen, to unlock its secrets, hoping to find a way to use it to his advantage. But the more he listened to its whispers, the more horrified he became. Then, one night, as he held the ivory and ash object, it whispered a new name. A name he knew all too well: his own. The truth hit him like a physical blow. The relic hadn't just recorded the deaths of others, it had recorded his. His fate was sealed, his death already sold to the highest bidder. The market, which had been his means of survival, had just signed his death warrant. He was no longer a player in the game, he was the prize. Panic set in. He was now hunted. The winding tunnels, once his familiar territory, became a terrifying maze. Chanting spirits, their voices rising from the walls, seemed to mock him. The neon-lit bones, once a source of wonder, now looked like the bars of a cage. Madame Kakoro's enforcers, the bone guards, were on his trail, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Running, hiding, Sefu realized there was no escape. He was trapped in a cycle of greed he had helped perpetuate. Every relic he'd ever sold, every ghost he'd ever profited from, seemed to be closing in on him. It was in that moment of pure desperation, With his back against the wall, that Sefu chose something incredibly rare in the shadowy world of Ajura. He chose conscience. He knew he couldn't sell the relic. He couldn't pass this curse on to someone else. And he couldn't let his own death be just another transaction in Madam Kakoro's ledger. He had to break the cycle. Clasping the relic tight, he ran not towards an escape route, but towards the heart of the market, towards the one place of true power, the ancestral shrine. This was the nexus of the bone market, a sacred space where the oldest and most powerful spirits resided. It was a place of reverence, not commerce. Bursting into the hallowed chamber, Sefu ignored the gasps of the few priests who guarded it. He stood before the great altar, and for the first time, he called upon the spirits not for profit, but for justice. With a desperate cry, he raised the relic high and shattered it against the ancient stone of the shrine. The moment it broke, the market erupted. An unearthly scream tore through the tunnels as the stored whispers of death were released all at once. The very foundations of the place trembled. Ash and dust filled the air, burning the lungs. The bone guards, animated by Madame Kakoro's dark contracts, rose from the ground, their empty sockets glowing with malevolent light. Sefu was no warrior, but that night, he fought. He fought with a courage born from deep regret, a strength fueled by a desperate need for redemption. He fought not just with his fists, but with every ounce of will he possessed. The air filled with the clash of steel against bone, the screams of enraged spirits, and the incantations of a dying order. Madame Kakoro herself appeared, her face a mask of fury. The smile was gone, replaced by a snarl of pure hatred. She unleashed her power, the contracts bound to her soul swirling around her like a storm of shadows. But the justice Sefu had unleashed was a power even she could not control. The spirits of those whose deaths she had profited from turned against her. The very contracts carved into bone that gave her power now became her chains, dragging her down. She fell, not to a blade or a fist, but crushed beneath the immense weight of her own greed. As the first light of dawn pierced the cracks in the world above, a profound silence fell over the bone market. The glowing lights of the bones flickered and died. The spirits settled. The market, a bastion of avarice for centuries, had finally collapsed into stillness. Sefu Balogun, bruised and bleeding, stood alone amidst the ruin. He was still a nobody, still a son of the street. But he was alive. And more importantly, he was free. The story of Sefu serves as a stark reminder, a truth that echoes from the silent depths of Ajura. Greed feeds fast, but in the end, it always eats its owner. If this story from the shadows moved you and you want to hear more truths that whisper from the darkness, make sure to like this video, share it with others who appreciate a good tale, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening.